Welcome back to the channel. We're back with our Spider-Man Commander deck profile to SP-DR, piloted by Penny. We have Dree, a white and a blue for a 4/4 with Vigilance, where when this creature enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and whenever modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you could draw a card. In theory, you could run this deck a couple ways. You could run auras, you could run equipments, you could run blink, so you keep getting those +1/+1 counters on the creatures. But we're just running straight +1/+1 counters with this deck, so that we could have more and more ways to draw some cards, some ways to benefit off of drawing cards while we're at it. But yeah, it's kind of fun to build +1/+1 counters without green, because like normally like you rely so much on the doubling in like extra +1/+1 counter abilities, but like this was actually really fun to build without that. Let's get into a card by card. Animation module: whenever one or more creatures with a +1/+1 counter, whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are placed on a creature, you may pay one, create a 1/1 servo artifact creature token. You could also give some extra counters onto your stuff. But having those extra tokens allows us some extra things to put some +1/+1 counters on, some extra things to swing in with. Then it allows us the upgraded chance in order to get those draw powers off. Arcane Signet for some additional mana. Also, we want to make sure we're trying to swing at each opponent. Deals combat damage to a player. It's not necessarily one or more players. So, if we deal 1 damage to each player, that's 3 cards we're drawing every turn. Astrologians, Planisphere, 2 mana, job select, get that 1/1 hero. Whenever a equipped creature is a wizard, in addition to its other types, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, or whenever you draw your 3rd card each turn, which once again, we could potentially do with, I'm just going to call it Spider. I think that's how it's actually called in the movie. It's been a minute since I've watched it. When you draw your 3rd card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, allowing some additional +1/+1 counters on our creatures in order to allow them to be modified to deal that extra damage. Shadow Spear, in order to give our stuff trample, because we don't have our normal, like, and all your creatures with +1/+1 counters to them have trample, we gotta make sure we have ways to actually give them that trample. Along with equipping this onto a creature also makes it into a modified creature, so that helps us out a whole bunch there as well. Soul Ring for the extra mana, Swiftfoot Boots, another way to make our creatures modified, but also giving them that haste to make sure they attack the turn they come down. Sword of Truth and Justice, get some +1/+1 counters onto our stuff, proliferate to get some additional +1/+1 counters on our stuff, a little bit of protection, and being an equipment itself, it helps us have more modified creatures. Talisman of Progress for that extra mana, and the Ozolith, because you're in a +1/+1 counter deck, you want to have ways to move around your counters when your creatures get removed. For our creatures, we have Abzan Falconer, in order to get some flying on our creatures to make sure they can fly over our opponent's stuff in order to actually deal some damage. Arid Gainsborough. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Arid. When she gets removed, put her +1/+1 counters on each legendary creature you control, potentially putting them onto Spider, or we have a lot of like legendary creatures in this one, and just a lot of ways to put +1/+1 counters on our creatures, so she could basically make all your, like, say if you had 5 from Ozolith, you make that 5 into 15 if you had like 3 other legendary creatures when she gets removed. Chasm Skulker, whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Chasm Skulker. He enjoys having the +1/+1 counters put on him so that you can create some blue squid creature tokens when he gets removed, and overall he likes to draw power as well to get those +1/+1 counters in the first place. Cosmic Guard Zenith, when you cast your 2nd spell each turn, get a couple tokens or get some +1/+1 counters on all of your creatures, allowing us those counters onto Arid, allowing them onto our other creatures that really enjoy having them on them. And also having the token sometimes is nice so you have more things to swing in on your opponents with in order to steal that damage. Crystalline Crawler, remove a +1/+1 counter from this card, add 1 mana of any color. We have plenty of ways to put +1/+1 counters on this card. That could be a lot of ramp. Denry Kiln, Editor-in-Chief, 4 mana for 2/2. Enters the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter, First Strike, or Vigilance counter on it. Whenever another non-token creature you control enters the battlefield, Denry has counters on it. Put the same number of those counters on that creature as well. aka get some like First Strike counters or Vigilance counters onto our creatures along with his +1/+1 counters that we're going to be getting on them with some other effects. This is basically our equivalent of like Loyal Unicorn. I forgot the name of it for some reason. Dreamtide Whale. Since we don't have ways to like necessarily put a lot of plus one counters on things, we gotta find ways to proliferate so that we have other ways to go about getting those plus one counters onto things, so they become big enough to swing in on our opponents. So this one helps a whole bunch because it is also a 7/5 for Dream Mana, and someone's going to be casting at least 2 spells each round, so we'll keep on getting to get more and more vanishing counters onto it, or time counters, whatever they're called. That's Legion Duelist. Whenever one or more plus one counters are put on this card, draw a card. We're putting plenty of plus one counters on it, allowing us to draw plenty of cards. We only get to do it once each turn, so we have to do it during each of our opponent's turns as well. Enduring Curiosity, we're already trying to deal damage to our opponent to draw cards, so let's draw some more cards while we're at it. Envoy of Ancestors, modified creatures you control have lifelink. Yeah, just overall good. Helps us out with Eris ability. Helps us out with, just another way to get some benefits for our creatures plus one counters. Esper Sentinel, a creature that just likes to have a lot of plus one counters on it. This way, instead of asking, do you pay to 1? You could ask, do you pay to 4? Or something along those lines. Generous Pup, whenever one or more counters are put on this creature, or specifically plus one counters, you put those counters on each creature you control, plus one counter on it, allowing us a lot of counters go around. This card's up to $18. Wow. Grateful Apparition, whenever it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, proliferate, allowing us to get more and more plus one counters onto our stuff, allowing us, maybe more vigilance counters with Denry. Sorry, where were we? But yeah, overall just good ability. Also the flying allows us to get that draw power even easier. Heliod Sun Crown, whenever you gain life, put a plus one counter on target creature or enchantment you control. Give our creatures lifelink so that they could actually have ways to help us gain that life. And then have that as a way to get those plus one counters on creatures to begin with. Herald of Secret Streams, creatures you control with plus one counters on them can't be blocked. We're trying to deal damage to our opponents with our creatures with plus one counters. I think this works really well in here. Sorry, I don't think. I know. Hope Initiate. Training, get some plus one counters on your creatures with less power. Remove 2 plus one counters among creatures you control, destroy target artifact or enchantment. A little bit of removal's nice and helps us benefit off of having those plus one counters. Lae'zel, Vlaakith's Champion. Vlaakith? I know I played a game, it's been a minute too. 3 mana for 3/3. Whenever you put a counter on something, put that many +1 as well. We like this ability a whole bunch. Lion Sash. Now we get some plus one counters on your creatures, or benefit off those plus one counters while we're at it. Also, an equipment, another way to make our creatures modified. Luminarch Aspirant, another way to get some more plus one counters onto our creatures. We like it. Luminous Broodmoth. We don't necessarily need just plus one counters. We could use flying counters while we're at it instead, in order to have them come back modified and even easier for them to deal damage now if they're flying. And also with that as well, is like that's another enter the battlefield ability for Spider. Lila, holographic assistant, whenever you draw a card, put a plus one counter on target creature. Really good way to get some plus one counters every turn. Metastatic Evangel, another way to proliferate. Mech's Lunarch, way to get plus one counters on all of your creatures by removing the plus one counters from him. Patrolling Peacemaker, another way to proliferate. Your opponent's going to be trying to target your stuff. We say no thank you, or even if they target your other opponents. Polywog Prodigy, another creature in blue that really likes having those plus one counters on it, allowing us to draw a lot of cards. Silent Hall Creeper, get some plus one counters on itself, unblockable, already a modified creature, allowing us to draw power, and draw power itself. Drumming Bird, another way to proliferate. In theory, we could run like some poison counters in here in order to like really benefit off this proliferation, but no, we didn't do that for this deck. Walking Ballista, another creature that really benefits off those plus one counters, and we're running Heliod, so we may as well. Yoshimaru, another creature that likes having those plus one counters on it. Like we said, we have quite a few like legendary creatures in here, so may as well benefit off of it. And Zac Fair enters with plus one counter on it already. You make another creature indestructible and get some plus one counters on it. Let's scroll on over here to the second half of the deck. You can also run some Planeswalkers in here in order to really benefit that proliferation there as well. We didn't for this deck, but you could. Enchantments of Kadar's Crusade. Anytime a creature enters, put a plus one counter on all your creatures. That could be a lot of plus one counters to go around. Make sure you have your dice handy. Beldar Retreat. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, making it so we have all modified creatures to deal a lot of damage. They also get Vigilance, so we don't have to be as scared about swinging in. And Inexorable Tide, whenever you cast a spell, Proliferate. We're casting lots of spells. We want to keep on casting spells to deal more and more +1/+1 counters to deal more damage. Staggering Insight, another just nice enchantment for this deck. Enchant creatures +1/+1 lifelink. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. More draw power, more modified creatures. And Wizard class, another way to benefit those benefit that draw power that we're getting to get more +1/+1 counters onto our stuff. And for our instants and sorceries, they have a counterspell with an offer you can't refuse, Arcane Denial for a counterspell, Boon of Safety for some shield counters on our stuff, which we could later proliferate in order to basically make ourselves indestructible. Counterspell for a counterspell, Dovin's Veto for a counterspell, Generous Gift for some removal, Mana Drain for a counterspell and a lot of mana, Pet to Exile for some removal, Pongifies for some removal, Protection Magic. Another way, some shield counters, like I said, we can proliferate to make them indestructible essentially, or we could just know that they're modified creatures now, both of which we like. Ripples of Potential, another way, proliferate. Stroke of Midnight for some removal, Swan Song for a counterspell, Source Splashes for some removal, Unbreakable Formation for some protection. Bossry Solidarity, another way, some +1/+1 counters onto all of our creatures. Damning Verdict, we want to make sure we remove all of our opponent's stuff and none of ours. We have +1/+1 counters on all of our stuff, so it helps us out, not our opponent. Requisition Raid, another way to get some +1/+1 counters onto our stuff. I like to see it. Supreme Verdict, another board wipe. We need at least 3. And Wave Goodbye. Well, I know I don't run Dree in every deck, but in theory, this one I feel like we need Dree. And Wave Goodbye, return each creature with a +1/+1 counter on it to its owner's hand. AKA, get rid of our opponent's stuff and not ours. But that's the deck there. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you like the video. If you want to see more like this, subscribe so you can stay tuned for future videos. And thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of the day.